Hello everyone. This is room number, what are we in? Room number 1. The Omega How to Implement and Use the Responsive Theme session. I'd like to introduce you from Sydney. One of the guys has got a hat. His name is Colin? Jack. Oh. Jack Torello. Taranto. Okay. And Colin Watson and Christian Biggins. Correct? Yep. Yeah. I'll let the guys take it away. Just in the other rooms, we've also got the Views AP exposure presentation. In the Power CMS room, we've got the intermediate Moodle integration tour, and in the Melbourne room, we've got the truth about job hunting. But anyway, here it is, the Omega session.
Morning, everyone. I'm Colin Watson. You've already heard the names, Christian Biggins and Jack Taranto. Originally, you just saw our names, Colin and Christian, on the session proposal. That's because Jack was on holidays in the Outback. But he actually has more experience about Omega than us, so it didn't feel right to just do it without him and then rub it in his face when he turned up back to work. So that's why that name isn't on the session proposal. We're going to present to you the Omega Drupal theme, which was written by Jake Strawn, and he's got some great videos online as well. You can follow up later on. It's a responsive theme, which is the buzzword right now in web design. We're not going to talk too much about responsive, but what we're going to do is we're going to break it up into 3 parts. And I'm going to talk about benefits of the Omega theme. Christian is going to talk about the concepts of the Omega theme, and we're going to run through some slides. And then we're going to get to the most exciting part, which is going to be a live demo by Jack Taranto. And you can see it live, changes to some of the template files and style sheets, directory structure and so forth. And you can see it working right before your very eyes. So that's going to be exciting. What not to expect from this is an in-depth look into responsive design, because if you want that, Jeffrey Roberts will be talking about that later today. He's the guy in the red jumper there and a hat. So what are some of the benefits? Why would you want to use the Omega Drupal theme? There's so many different themes, and it's hard to choose one, right? First of all, you get a grid system. It's based on the 960 grid system, which is a very popular web standard for grids. And you get a choice of a 12-column grid, a 16-column grid, and also a 24-column grid. Right. The other benefit you get is you get to pick either XHTML or HTML5 as your standard markup, and you get a starter kit, which you can use for that. Another benefit is that the interface of the theme settings for Omega is very, very easy to use. It's GUI, and it also reduces a lot of tipple-fib file usage. And anyone can go in there and with simple clicks turn things on and off. And that's another good benefit. Also, you can use the Delta module very easily. If you're not familiar with the Delta module, it does work with other themes in Drupal as well, but it works really, really well with the Omega theme. And what Delta does is it makes duplicates of your theme settings, so you can create new or different layouts of your theme. And that works really well with the context module, right? And what the context module allows you to do is allows you to swap the layout based on which page you're on. So it's relevant to page, and also it works really well with the Delta. And both these modules are available again from Drupal.org. One other benefit that's really good is it comes with the Formalize JavaScript library. And what Formalize is, it sort of unifies form appearance across multiple browsers. And it's really, really easy to switch on in the Omega theme. It's just a tick, really. And so that comes built in, and that's another good benefit. What you can also do is you can disable core style sheets with a simple tick. And so it's that same sort of GUI interface that we talked about earlier, in which you can change your theme settings and so forth and play with that. And that's pretty good too. And also, if you look at the slide, you can see some really cool class attributes for the node article there, which also gives you some nice class sort of attributes there. The block's also very good. Very nice, clean sort of class attributes for you to use. And you can do some really cool theming with that, so that's one of the benefits. So I'm just going to run through some of the benefits. It's up there for you to see. Very quickly, you get the 960 grid system, you get your choice of markup, theme settings, the Delta and the context module work really, really well with the Omega theme. Also, it comes with the formalized JavaScript library to unify your forms. You can disable core styles and then use really, really nice CSS attributes. So those are the benefits, just a broad overview. I'm going to hand you guys over to Christian, who's going to talk about some of the concepts of the Omega theme, and then we're going to follow up with a live demo, and Jack's going to handle that.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Christian. I'm just going to run through some of the concepts, and Colin's left me with his final slide. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be saying. Walk towards the light. So the concepts of the Omega theme, these concepts include sections, zones and regions, the layout interface, and also the responsive grid. Sections, zones and regions, these are concepts are basically page content containers that allow you to split the page up into various sections. In this example, you can have a header section, and within that header section we have the zone, and within that zone we have regions, so we're able to slice the page up fairly well to suit the content that we're just trying to display. The layout UI that Colin touched on briefly includes pretty comprehensive settings for each zone, section and region. It allows us to specify what section is going to contain what zone, which is going to contain what region. Each region can be changed to fit into whatever zone we have already specified. We can change the zone and regions specifically. Things like the prefix of a zone, the prefix of a region is padding before the region, so if we need extra space for the layout, we can add that there. We can specify the width of the region, which is relative to the width in columns of the parent, or in this case, would be the zone. So if the zone is 12 columns in width, we would have 12 columns to play with within that zone with the regions. And that's also relative with the suffix, which is padding after the content. So if we wanted to make sure that there is a gap before or after, we can do that with the prefix and the suffix. The weight follows the familiar use of weight within Drupal, and that is that content with heavier weight will sink to the bottom. It allows us to order our cells and content containers within the page. This is just an example of what I was saying before about the zones and the column count. If you wanted a zone to be 12 columns, then the regions within that zone would have a maximum of 12 columns to play with. So you could have 3 regions, for example, each of 4 columns, or you could have 2 with 3 and 1 with 6, or you could use padding as well, both the prefix and suffix. The grid is a pretty familiar concept. Basically, the grid uses columns to split the page up. In this example, this is the wide column width. So, for example, I believe this is the wide column is displayed over 1,200 pixels. So the content is split up in this scenario with 12 columns of 80 pixels each. And as we reduce the size of our display, the columns are reduced in size, but you retain the same number of columns. So we still have 12 columns to play with, but now the columns are only 60 pixels. That happens again with the narrow width. We drop down to 40 pixels. So everything is relative, relative to the number of columns, not necessarily the column size. And then when we get to the mobile display, the columns aren't used at all. The content is simply stacked on top of each other, and we just use 100% width. So the contents of the Amiga theme are simply the concept of containers, regions containing your content, which are specified in zones and then sections. The layout settings have their own interface, and it's using the 960 GS responsive grid system, which is pretty common. So I'm going to hand over now to Jack, who's going to run through all the what you can do with this theme. Thank you. You're using that, are you?
Maybe text now. Cool. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. There's loads of you here. It's great. I'm just going to escape that. I also have to change my display settings here. Cool. Cool, so I've just got a default installation of Amiga up and running here. I haven't really done anything to it at all. I've just kind of enabled the module, and that's really it. So we've got, Amiga starts with a display overlay. So we can see there's a background image which has got the grid there, so we can see it, and it's also got these little debugging blocks which illustrate where all the regions are and how big they are. It's got little clickers on the side just to disable that and get it back to the standard view. So it's quite nice. It's got some funky jQuery stuff going on there, and it's really quite a useful tool when you're just starting to lay out a page. So I'll just demo how the grid actually expands. So it's all powered by CSS media queries. And you'll see here we're looking at the 960 grid size. If I just resize the corner, you'll see it's dropped down to 720. So it just kind of pops in and out like that. So it really is a nice implementation of responsive. Rather than being a fluid, using fluid columns, it's just got this multi-step grid system, which is really quite useful for designing, fixed width content pages. It makes it quite easy. So once I pop down further, we see the mobile grid version. So basically all the columns are just stacked on top of each other, and they've been stretched out to 100 pixels wide. So I've got a little iOS simulator here, and you can see how well that works for small screens, particularly mobiles. So I'll jump over now to another web browser, and I've just logged in as my admin user here. So I'll just show you some of the features in the settings GUI. So this is just a sub-theme that I've created from the HTML5 starter kit. Cool, so we've got a fairly comprehensive theme settings page. A lot of themes don't really have this many settings, and they've I think Jake's put a lot of work into getting this looking really good and working really nice. So we can choose our grid system. We've got a choice of 960 grid or fluid. So fluid just swaps everything to percentage values, which, it's sort of a design choice that you've got to take from the start, whether you're going to design fluid or design 960. But a lot of designs that people work with are 960 as a standard anyway. So it's good that it's got that option anyway. So going down, we can just switch the responsive grid on and off if we like. You can then use Amiga as a just a standard base theme like you would Zen or something like that. But going down, we've got here the actual layout settings. So we can set a primary layout, and this kicks in for older browsers like IE, which don't have support for media queries. And then we've just got all the layouts underneath here with the exact CSS media query that's being used. So you can alter this to suit your needs. But the queries that are here have been really well thought out. So as a base, you're not really going to need to change these. They use a system of inheritance, so I'll demo how that works in a second with CSS files. But basically, each step, the wider the page gets, it will inherit the styles from the previous page. So it's kind of like a mobile, it's like the whole mobile first philosophy. You start designing for a mobile phone and then you move up to like greater screen sizes. So there's 3 layouts of standard: narrow, normal, and wide. Wide is good. It's another advantage of responsive design, is that you've got the ability to design really wide pages which look great on even like 15-inch mobile displays or like really big, you know, Apple Cinema displays or whatever. So rather than just having a fixed 960 width, you've got the ability just to blow out the page and make it look really good on large screens as well as really small screens, of course. So these media queries are really well written and they work really well, and I think a lot of thought's has gone into all them. But anyway, I'll move on to the actual meat of where sort of Amiga shines, and that's the layout configuration. So this page is a little bit chunky at first, and it's not as graphical as it could be. Ideally, you'd have sort of a drag and drop interface, which I believe Jake's actually working on at the moment. But anyway, we've got all the configuration that we need here. Basically, this page allows us to build an entire layout for a site. So we can take a design and we can identify all the column widths of all the various elements, and then we can just build it out here. We can add extra zones, and we can add extra regions. So let's expand. Here we've got our content zone. We've got some configuration. We can provide full width wrappers around all the zones, so you can build, it's really easy to build designs which have got full width background images for each section. You can also force the zone to be rendered, so if its regions are empty, it'll show up anyway. And you can set the column count here, so I can change this content zone to be 16 columns. So these are just what Christian was showing you before with the 960 standards. So you can set the column count independently for each zone. That just, again, gives you heaps more flexibility when you're building a design and also when you're designing a design, because you can use multiple different columns. And it's just flexible in that way. So if I go back to, go back to Firefox, refresh that, you'll see our content columns split out. It's got a new background image, and the main content column's actually expanded to fill the extra column count. So I'll go back to our theme settings, and I'll just open up the preface zone. You can see that we've got 3 regions in there. So we can see our preface first is taking up 4 columns. So if we want, I can expand that to 8 and just set this preface third to not show up anywhere. Once I save that. It's a little bit slow. So we'll see that preface third column drop off and the first one will expand out. So it's really, really, really flexible, and it's just a great way to build build your pages. So in the past, I've always had to use a page TPL file or multiple page TPL files, and you have to split the page up, you have to add all your own markup, you have to add all your own classes. Even if you're using like a 960 thing, it becomes almost kind of tedious to have to build out pages using markup. So it's nice that Amiga has got that built in it. I think it's probably one of the key things that makes it a great theme. And not only that, of course, but it's built in such a way that just allows the responsive design automatically. So anyway, moving on, I will show you the actual anatomy of the theme itself. So I've got just a text editor here, and I've just got the directory structure for the Amiga theme. So Amiga is made out of two themes, Alpha and Amiga. So Alpha contains the basic framework of the whole theme. So it's got all the grid CSS, a little bit of the default mobile and the reset CSS, debug CSS. It's kind of all the basic framework things to get the whole theme working. It's also got standard templates for regions and sections and zones. But it's completely vanilla. There's no presentational CSS in there except for the actual grid sizes. So moving down, then we've got the Amiga theme itself. So here, Amiga throws in some kind of default branding styles, menu styles, text styles. It's also got the JS libraries for media queries and formalize. And it's got some standard TPL files which add things like the logo into the branding region and add menus, add primary links and secondary links into the menu region. So the Amiga theme sits on top of Alpha, and it kind of adds a lot of base styles which would probably help most people get up and running quickly. So rather than just having a total framework like nothing theme like Alpha, you've got something to start on that's a bit more fleshy if you want that. And then at the bottom we've got starter kits for both styles. So if you're coming from a highly technical background and you want to build a design and you want to have it completely empty from the start, like you can go with Alpha and use XHTML. Or if you want to use HTML5 and some of the formalize and other JS libraries, then you've got to use the Amiga starter kit. Cool, so I've got my, just above up here, I've got the Hats on Devs, which is our little sub-theme. So there's some instructions inside the Amiga theme of how to actually create a sub-theme, because there's a few things you've got to do. You've got to rename some files and stuff. Or you can install the Amiga Tools module, which I've got here. And you'll just see it adds a couple of options to the main screen, which pretty much gives you like a wizard which you're able to just click through and create a sub-theme. So you'll probably want to get this module installed. It makes things a lot easier. You can choose which starter kit and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've got my Hats on Devs theme here. So I'll look at adding a custom region first. So adding a custom region is really nothing, there's nothing new here. It's pretty much just your standard .info, like theme.info file. So you've just got to give it a machine name, and then you can give it your human readable name. Save that, and then you can just clear your cache to get the theme registry working. And I'll just go back, open up our layout settings. And down here, it'll come in as an unassigned region. So I've got my new region 1, then you can just pick a zone and pick a column width and get it started. So you can also create custom zones, because zones is a whole new Amiga concept. So as Christian was saying, a zone's basically just a wrapper for a bunch of regions, and it just helps you theme out a page and really just helps like presentational stuff, getting everything grouped like that. So yeah, exactly the same really as creating a region. You've just got to give it a machine name and a human name, and then clear cache. And you can have that zone come up. So there it is. So it's pretty simple. The one thing you can't create is sections. So you're limited to header section and content section and footer section. And because you can have as many zones as you want, that's not really a limitation. It's a pretty standard design for a page, really, that you've got those 3 sections. I mean, in content, you've got preface and postscript. Anyway, so these are all kind of standard regions that Amiga chucks in. And of course, it's very easy to expand. So I'll move on and go through CSS inheritance. So this is something which is a little bit tricky with Amiga, and it's not really that well documented at the moment. I think it's they're in the process of building out documentation. Anyway, you've got 4 or 5 style sheets here. So you've got global.css, and that's really your starting point for all your basic like global styles that you'll be using. So these styles affect the mobile version, and they affect like every single version. So you want to put all your typography stuff in here, font sizes, font colors, all that kind of core stuff, because you want to keep layout out of this style sheet and just use it for that kind of base presentational stuff. You've got this alpha default CSS, so this kicks in as soon as we're out of the mobile version. So I'll just add just a little style here to change the background color. So I can just refresh the page. So you'll see this new background color is kicked in for all these desktop versions. Once I go down to mobile, the style kicks out. So that all comes down to the media queries, which we were looking at before. So that's how the theme's been written. So if you want to change that whole system, you can actually just rewrite the media queries if you've got the knowledge. Anyway, you've got the narrow style sheet. So I'll just chuck in another selector. So this style sheet is only relevant for the narrow grid. So I'll refresh. And I'll scale down to that version there so we can see we've just got the red background for narrow. And then we've got normal, so we're stepping up in the inheritance list. So if I add a style here to normal, I'll just remove this style first. So here we've got our green background, red background. So we can they inherit styles in that way. If I was to remove this style from our normal style sheet, with the inheritance, this display will actually get the red background now. So that's something to be aware of when you're building out your style sheets, is that each level inherits the styles from the previous level. So you've either got to use resets to reset your styles back to what you need them to be for the different layout, or you can use specific selectors. Yeah, that's right. So it starts at narrow, then normal, then wide, and each, as it gets larger, they inherit the styles from the smaller version. So,
is there a mobile version as well, or is this?
Yeah, so your mobile styles all come into global.css.
You said not to put layout stuff on, just because it's mobile doesn't mean it's not going to have.
Yeah, so you could put, if you wanted to, you could put mobile layout in global. Amiga, well, Alpha has got a alpha mobile.css file. So you can copy that CSS file into your directory and then give it a one-liner in like the .info file, and then you'll get the ability to have mobile styles. Yeah. You've also got the selectors. So if I just take a look at the code of the page, inside our body tag, we've got this responsive layout normal. So that's something Amiga's added in with jQuery, which gives us like a separate class for each version of the page. So I've gone down to narrow now, and you'll see it's responsive layout narrow. I can go down to mobile, and we've got responsive layout mobile. So you can use these selectors in the appropriate style sheet to like define stuff specific to that layout. So the inheritance, I don't necessarily fully agree with the whole inheritance system that it works. It's just important to know how it works. I would prefer to have a separate style sheet for each version, which each version didn't know about the other style sheet, and then you could just sort of do it out, you could just program it all that way. But I mean, that's the way. That's the whole mobile first philosophy that you're sort of designing, and I think that comes back to like some fundamental principles of responsive design. But I mean, in those theme settings, you can just rewrite those media queries, which I've done for a couple of projects anyway. So each version, like the style sheets are dependent on the screen size, and they won't know about each other. Cool. So I'll just show you some basic TPL stuff now, quickly. So our templates, our base theme templates directory is totally empty. So we can just create TPLs like you would for anything. So I'll just create one for branding. So I'm just naming it region -- branding, and branding is just the machine name of that region. And I can actually just copy the markup out of one of these default regions from Alpha. And then I've got like all the Amiga attributes and stuff that get chucked in here. So I can just add a little, what's the name? And you'll see the branding region at the top. It'll get that little thing. Oh, I'll have to actually, sorry, I have to clear my cache first. Just so the site will pick up that template. Cool. So it's dropped out the logo because the logo was getting chucked in there by the Amiga region branding TPL, so it's just overridden that as you would expect. You've also got the ability to add section TPLs and zone TPLs in here. The naming strategy is exactly the same, so it's just like the zone -- the name of the zone.tpl. So it's quite easy to use TPLs and just to chuck in your own markup and add logos and add menus and all that kind of stuff. But it's also not essential. You don't necessarily need to use any TPL files at all. You can just create blocks in code with modules, or just use other blocks which are there, and you can just assign them all to regions. So you can, I mean, it is possible to use Amiga and not even have any TPL files at all, especially if you're using Display Suite or something like that. You can just do all your presentational markup via like a Drupal interface, and you don't really have to use TPL files, which I think is probably the way it's all going, really. Another really cool thing that Amiga does is creates pre-processed ink files. So this is, I believe anyway, it's a concept totally unique to Amiga. And it's just really, really, really nice. It gives you a really kind of clean theme where all this like variable stuff and all this kind of template-based pre-processed stuff is in its own ink file. So I've just got here pre-processed region.ink. You don't need to put a function name in here. You can just start creating your variables and putting your logic in after your PHP tag, and then you can get these show up these variables to show up in your TPL files. I'll just chuck in that. So in doing that, you kind of leave template.php purely for like custom, use it for like all your theme functions, any kind of custom theme functions. So it's just a nice, neat way of splitting everything out. We've also got a process directory where you can put process functions in if you prefer to use them. Cool, so I think that's pretty much everything I had to demo. We can move on. Blah, 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 and just answer some questions that anyone might have. So if you've got like basic questions, that's fine, or more advanced theming questions, that's fine. So just anything you want, we'll throw the mic out to you.
I was just wondering if you could touch on Omega Tools for anyone who has never heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Omega Tools is it's a kind of a helper module for the Omega theme, and one basic thing that it does is create like a new sub theme for you. So that's kind of at its basic level. But it also, the other good thing that it does, it lets you export all those theme settings that you created, that I was creating there in that demo. It lets you export them into just a big long list of variables which you could put in your .info file. So then you can that just allows you to easily deploy all your theme settings to your server. Yeah.
I was just wondering whether you know of any other upcoming themes that look very promising, or is Omega really the bee's knees and the only thing out
Well,
there?
I've become a little bit obsessed with Omega recently. I talk about it all the time, and I actually dream about it quite often too. So but I was doing a fair bit of research to figure out the ideal responsive theme. Is that me? Anyway, so I checked out adaptive theme, which uses like a fluid approach to getting a responsive grid. So I really enjoyed the I really like the 960 grid approach, because 960 really is like a total complete standard for designing web pages, and pretty much every web developer out there is using it. So well, I hope they are anyway. So as far as like other up and coming themes, I'm not really that sure. As I said, I've just become obsessed with Omega, and that's all I've really got into recently anyway. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you've got any kind of tips or pointers for actually sort of getting designers to design usable designs for this kind of environment.
Yeah, I think the key thing is that they're familiar with 960.gs. Sorry. So there's some really good PSD templates online on the 960.gs site, and I think if it's just it's a very basic concept, and any designer will really be familiar with laying out on a grid. Yep. And I mean, you've got Omega's implementation, which gives you the 3 different sizes. So if you're trying to get a designer into responsive design, that's a good start. Yep. But they also need to have a solid knowledge of how markup actually works on a page, and how Omega expands and contracts the grid. So it just being a system of the grid, like the column widths getting smaller rather than the markup getting different. Yeah. So they have to have kind of an idea of how markup works, and how responsive design doesn't change the markup, it just resizes it visually. Yeah, but those templates are really good, and it's great. It's a great start to designing a page, just having that grid, and you can say, all right, the header's going to be, the logo's going to be 3 columns wide, and this is going to be, yeah, it's really good.
Can you talk a bit about image resizing across different devices?
It's not I haven't got into it in where I've actually been resizing the physical image using image cache or something, but I've just been using the image like max width 100% on all images. So that kind of just squashes them down depending on how wide their container is. So that's kind of a standard approach for using, like you can actually just use full width images that are big, like 1200 pixels wide or something like that, and then they just like pop down for each different display. And then you've got like a few disadvantages with that. Obviously, like if you're using mobile and your connection's crappy and you've got to download some like 80 kilobyte image, that's obviously not a great thing. But I think, I mean, there is a module called responsive images or something like that. I haven't got into using that yet, but I think it's got like a JavaScript approach to swapping them out. But that also adds extra weight with the JavaScript as well and stuff too. So I mean, it's kind of, there's a lot of ways you could go to optimize pages on each of your different displays. You could spend loads of time figuring that all out. But max width 100% works well, and also works well on high resolution mobile displays like the Retina display on the iPhone, because then you've got a high res image condensed down to the right pixel size, so actually the image looks really good and not chunky and pixelated like a lot of stuff does on the display.
Cool, thank you.
So with the layout GUI designer thing, is it possible to create multiple layouts, say if you want like a 3-column home page and then a 2-column content page or things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, Colin mentioned that briefly at the beginning with the Delta module and context module. So Delta is another brainchild of Jake's, and it's basically exactly that. So in the past there's been loads of different ways to do it. Context had context layouts, and that sort of let you create new TPL files for different contexts. But the Delta module pretty much just duplicates that whole config page and puts it all into code. So you've basically just got a whole new theme layout. You can just change everything. You can get rid of all your regions, just have one region, or just get rid of all your columns and resize it. And then you've got a Delta then, which you can just assign to any section of a site using the context module. So that's pretty neat, really. It's another great thing about Omega. Yeah.
So you mentioned responsive images before, so you haven't really been playing with that. You've just been doing the max.
Yeah,
width,
I've been
100%.
pretty cheap about that, I guess. I've just been setting everything as max width. Yeah, I mean it is a pretty well-used technique. The responsive images module looks pretty good, but I just haven't had
it uses
inclination to put
it
on.
uses one of the standard resizing JavaScripts, but what it actually does is it needs you to set up the ones in an image style still, so you
Yeah.
can set up various
Yeah.
ones. But in order to do that, the module actually needs calls in the .ht access. So that's kind of where I found it really restrictive, because you couldn't really give it to a client and allow them to then change that image cache size, because they'd actually have to change it in the HT access, I found as well. But I've just kind of gone on the way of using like the image cache sets and then just calling them in template functions.
Okay.
But it seems to be one of the hardest areas in responsive theming at the
Yeah.
moment is how to deal with that
Yeah.
image resizing.
I think that's quite a good approach, like actually having the different images there and pulling them out with JavaScript for different screen sizes. The Modernizer library is really, really good. It's got built-in like JavaScript media queries. So you can run those media queries before you actually load the images, and then just load the appropriate image style depending on what's there. Because I think that's a big advantage with image styles. The image styles module is you can just create different image styles for all your different sizes. So, and then you probably just got to figure it out in like an advanced way to actually get it to work. But yeah.
It seems to be in a really early stages still, the whole,
Yeah.
What people are doing on the web and stuff with responsive images. So it's quite a grey area at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah. One more question?
You talked about the upsides and benefits. Any downsides? Anything you wish were different?
The CSS inheritance thing, which I mentioned before, that I found that, to me, it just logically didn't really sit with my style of coding. So I just went and rewrote those media queries so that they would just, basically all the styles didn't affect each other. Yeah, other disadvantages, I'll probably find out because we're about to launch a site which we built with it, so we'll find out if there's anything serious there. Yeah. Cool. One more?
Jack, I was just going to ask, the Omega theme obviously has some advantages for the like responsive design and stuff. Have you actually moved for non-responsive websites? Are you sort of keen on sticking with Omega for that as well? Like with
I definitely start using Omega as a base theme permanently. In the past, I've used Tau, which is like a development seed base theme, and that was really great at stripping everything out. But I think Omega actually does it better because it's actually just like being able to disable like core style sheets. It's got kind of like just really great stuff in there that makes a really good base theme.
It seems that it streamlines the whole process as part of that initial setup. So.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. Yeah, it's a great base theme to use, even if you're not using responsive stuff. And there's just that checkbox so you can just like switch it off and you don't even have to worry about any of that responsive stuff. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Could I just ask one more question? With the those media queries that you've updated, can you supply them online at some stage?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, they're actually just really, really, really simple. Yeah, you're pretty much just setting min, max width for each thing, and you've just got it's just a matter of picking the right pixel size for that layout to look good. Yeah.
Yeah, because the inheritance thing was something that I really struggled with.
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked a bit into the theme, but yeah, it was really disorientating that something I was doing in one was affecting another that I wasn't. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it is that just that whole mobile first philosophy, and yeah, that's what the theme adheres to. So yeah. All right, cool.
Thank you.
So I'd just like to thank Jake Strawn for Omega and his contributor Sebastian Simpson or Fubby. Cool. Thanks everybody. Cheers. Cool.